Hello students, and welcome to the end of Unit 5. In this video, we are going to review what we have learned in Unit 5. We are also going to talk about how we can use what we learned in English conversation. So near the end of this lesson, you will see an example conversation and we'll get some practice there. So let's go ahead and begin our review. First, let's answer this question. What have we learned? What have we learned over the last 2 weeks in Unit 5? We have learned furniture vocabulary, household chores vocabulary, using not as, adjective as, and not adjective enough, using have to and don't have to, and describing your dream home. So before we talk about how to use these in English conversation, let's go through one by one and review the important points about what we have learned. First, let's review the Unit 5 vocabulary. In Unit 5, we had 16 total words that we learned. We learned about furniture vocabulary and household chores vocabulary. Right now, let's go through the words one by one. Make sure to listen for and practice your pronunciation as you listen. When you hear these words, try to imagine and remember what they are. If you don't remember, then that's a good sign that you should review that term. Let's go through our first list of words about furniture. For our 8 furniture words, we have armchair, bookcase. We could also say bookshelf. This is a place where we keep our books, right? Carpet. Remember, carpet is on the floor in the whole room, the entire room. If it is in a small space, we just call it a rug. Cupboard. This is where we store things, particularly in our kitchens, right? Remember from the vocabulary video that in that word, we don't really hear that P. We just say cupboard. Next we have dresser. This is one place we can keep our clothes. We might also hear a dresser referred to as a chest of drawers. Next we have fridge. Fridge is short for refrigerator. Shelves. This means many, right? If we have just one, we would call it a shelf with an F at the end. And last, wardrobe. This is another place we could keep our clothes. Next, let's look at our household chores vocabulary. First, we have clean the kitchen. So clean is our verb in this sentence, in this phrase. We could say clean the room, clean the bathroom, clean the kitchen, and so on. Next we have do the ironing. If you remember, ironing is what we do to our clothes when they are a little bit wrinkled. Next we have empty the washing machine. To empty means to take something out, right? So we could empty the washing machine after we wash our clothes. Load the dishwasher. Load means to put something in. So I could load the dishwasher, which means put dishes into the dishwasher. I could also say load the washing machine. This would mean put my clothes in the washing machine. Next we have make the bed. Then we have tidy up. This means to pick up some clutter around your room, your home, your apartment, to make things more organized. Then we have vacuum. And finally, wash the dishes, which I'm sure you all love to do so much. So now let's go ahead and see if we can guess the correct term. We're going to look at some pictures and fill in the blanks with the correct vocabulary terms. Let's take a look at number 1. My clothes are so wrinkled. I need to before I wear them. If your clothes are wrinkled, it means there are some lines in them and they do not look very straight and clean and fresh. So what would we need to do? What is the chore where we make our clothes flat and nice with no wrinkles? Here's a hint. Do you remember what this is called? Here we would say, do the ironing. My clothes are so wrinkled. I need to do the ironing before I wear them. Number 2, there are not enough in my kitchen. I don't have enough space for all my things. So what would we call these places where we put all of our things in the kitchen? Here in this sentence, it's saying there are not enough, which means there are too many things in one place. I need more of these. What are these called? These are cupboards. And again, remember, we do not pronounce that P. Number 3, you can put your clothes in the or the. In our furniture vocabulary list, there were 2 pieces of furniture that you can put your clothes in. Here's a picture of both of them. Do you remember what these are called? So here we have, let's say this is number 1 and this is number 2 in our answer. What is number 1? Number 1 is dresser, or you might hear it called a chest of drawers. And number 2, wardrobe. So our sentence here would be, you can put your clothes in the dresser or the wardrobe. Number 4, our last example. Let's the house before our guests arrive. There are many things out of place. So this is a term for a household chore, and this is when you organize and make things look a little bit nicer, put things back in their place. Here our term would be tidy up. Now that we have reviewed the Unit 5 vocabulary, let's go ahead and review the grammar. If you remember from last week's video, there are 3 grammar points we are going to review. The first one is as, adjective, as. Remember, an adjective is a word used to describe things like big, small, tall, short, hot, cold, and so on. So our sentences would be things like as hot as small as, and so on. This phrase is used to compare things. Do you remember what it means to compare? To compare means to look at what is the same or what is different between 2 or more things. So we can use as, adjective, as to do this. We can add the word not in front of as, adjective, as to make it a negative statement. Not as tall as. Not as big as. Let's get a little more practice seeing if we can determine what these sentences mean. So here are 3 more sentences we can look at and try and guess what they mean. Number 1, she is as smart as Einstein. So we're comparing her and Einstein. And what are we saying here? It's a positive statement. There's no not. So this sentence means that she and Einstein have the same intelligence. They are equally as smart as. Number 2, this roller coaster is not as big as I thought it was going to be. Do you remember the example from the grammar video about a movie? This has a similar meaning. If it is not as big as I thought it was going to be, this means I thought the roller coaster would be really big, but it wasn't. Number 3, the apartment is not as expensive as the house. And what does this mean? This means that the apartment costs less than the house, or the house is more expensive. Now let's review our second grammar point. Adjective, enough. This phrase is used to say that something is adequate or inadequate. And just like with as adjective as, we can add not before this phrase to make it a negative statement. Let's get some practice. We're going to look at some sentences and see if we can determine what they mean. Number 1, the couch is wide enough for 3 people. What does that mean? The couch is wide enough for 3 people. This means that 3 people can sit on the couch comfortably. It is wide enough for 3 people to sit on. Number 2, you are not tall enough to reach the top shelf. So this means that the top shelf is too high and you're too short to reach it. You can't reach it because you are not tall enough. Your height is inadequate. Number 3, it's a nice day today, but it's not warm enough to go swimming. Not warm enough. What does this mean? This means it is too cold to go swimming. So as you can see, we use adjective enough and not adjective enough to talk about when things are adequate or inadequate. Now we're going to fill in the blanks. We're going to see whether we should use as adjective as or adjective enough in our sentences. So let's go ahead and begin. Number 1, my car is your car. Okay, so we want to use not, it's a negative, and the adjective big. So would I use as adjective as or adjective enough? Well, remember, if we are comparing two things, for example, my car and your car, we should use as adjective as. So how would I put not and big into as adjective as? Here our sentence would be, my car is not as big as your car. Remember, when we're comparing two things, we can use as adjective as. Number 2, is the armchair to fit in the corner? And we want to use the adjective small. Now, are we comparing anything in this sentence? No, we are not. We're just talking about the armchair, and we want to ask about its adequacy in size. So here we could say, is the armchair small enough to fit in the corner? Is it too big? Is it too small? Is it small enough to fit in the corner? Number 3, I think Avengers Endgame was Avengers Infinity War. And here we want to use not and good. So are we comparing in this sentence? Yes, we are. We're comparing two movies, Avengers Endgame and Avengers Infinity War. So should I use adjective enough or as adjective as? That's right, I should use as adjective as. So here, if I want to plug in not and good, we would say, I think Avengers Endgame was not as good as Avengers Infinity War. This means I liked Infinity War more than Endgame. Okay, number 4. This curry is good, but it's, and I want to use not and spicy. So here, am I comparing two things or two or more things? No, I am only talking about curry. So I want to use adjective enough. So let's go ahead and plug in not and spicy. Not spicy enough. This curry is good, but it's not spicy enough. This means I want it to be more spicy. Number 5. This room is my whole apartment. So here, are we comparing? Yes, we are. We're comparing this room and my whole apartment. So if we want to use the word big, plug it in, we would say as big as. This room is as big as my whole apartment. Our last grammar point from Unit 5 was have to and don't have to. This phrase is used to express something you must or must not do. So this is used to talk about obligation. Let's look at some sentences using have to and don't have to. You have to get a job. She doesn't have to make her bed until the morning. I have to wake up early tomorrow. We don't have to take a test today, right? So as you see in each of these sentences, these are used to talk about obligation or what we must do. Note that with I, you, we, and they, we can use do. I do have to, you don't have to. But when we're using he, she, and it, we change that do to does. She doesn't have to. Now let's put it together. We're going to fill in the blank with the correct form of have to or don't have to and a household chore. My sister before she goes to bed. All right, so let's say this is my sister. What is she doing? What chore is she doing? Here we would say, my sister has to wash the dishes. Remember to change that have to has when we're using he, she, or it. My sister has to wash the dishes before she goes to bed. She is obligated to, she must, she has to. Number 2, because I bought a Roomba. So this is a Roomba, in case you don't know what it is. So here we want to use don't. I don't. So what chore does a Roomba do? Here we could say, I don't have to vacuum anymore because I bought a Roomba. Let's look at our last example. We taught the dog a new trick. Now let's see, what is he doing? When we're using the subject he, would we say have to or has to? That's right, we would use has to. And what chore is he doing? He's loading the dishwasher. So we could say he has to load the dishwasher. Finally, let's review what you learned in the previous video, Modern English. You learned about describing your dream house. So let's review. There are many different kinds of houses, and you can use different questions when you're talking about them. Imagine what kind of home you would like to live in most. If you wanted to describe that to another person, you could use these 3 questions. What does the house have? Where is the house? And what is the best thing about the house? Let's look at an example of how we can answer those 3 questions. So you remember this from your book. And this writing here answers these 3 questions. What has the house got? Where is the house? And what's the best thing about the house? So first we see where it is. Near the beach? Near the sea? We can use the word near to describe what a house is close to. Next, we see what the house has, or more informally, what the house has got. So it's got big windows and a fantastic view of the sea, a lovely garden, a swimming pool, a skate park, and a huge fish tank. So this person's dream house has a lot. And finally, we can see what the best thing about the house is, or the special thing, which here they talk about the technology. So using these questions, we can come up with a wonderful description of what our dream house would be. Now that we've reviewed all of these things, vocabulary, grammar, and the modern English points, how can we use it in conversation? Well, with furniture vocabulary, we can talk about items in our home and things we want to buy. With household chores vocabulary, we can talk about what needs to be done at home. We can also give commands about chores, telling someone you need to do this or you have to do this. With as, adjective as, and adjective enough, we can compare things and describe whether something is adequate. This is great for talking about homes, but it can be used all throughout English conversation. With have to and don't have to, we can talk about obligations, what we must or must not do. And describing our dream home is useful because we can talk about where we want to live and our imagination about where we could live. So let's go ahead and put it to use in a conversation. Now you are going to listen to a conversation. Read along as you listen. Hey John, I heard that you're buying a new home soon. What's it like?
Yes, I am. I decided to buy a tiny home. I'm trying to be more environmentally friendly.
Oh wow. Is it big enough to have people visit?
It has a main room and a loft, and it's about as big as a small apartment. So it could fit 2 people.
That is so cool. Do you have to do anything before you move in?
Yes, I still have to do some cleaning. I have to vacuum and tidy up. Luckily, because it's so small, I don't have to clean very much.
Good point. Maybe I should get a tiny home. What rooms and furniture does your new tiny home have?
It has a kitchen, a bathroom, a small living room, and a loft where my bed is.
I'm surprised you can fit so much in a small space. Do you have outdoor space too?
Oh, yeah, definitely. It's near a river and next to a big forest. So there is a lot of outdoor space.
That's good. I like the idea of a tiny home, but I might get bored of being inside.
What kind of home would you like to live in?
I want a lot of space, but I also want to be close to nature. I'd love to live in a nice cottage.
Cool.
Now that we have listened to the conversation, let's look a little closer. What language points can we see in the conversation? Here we see the conversation script. So let's look for the language points. Vocabulary, as, adjective enough, have to, and describing a dream house. Let's start at the beginning of our conversation. The first language point we see is in this question right here. Is it big enough to have people visit? Here we see adjective enough, big enough. In a conversation, we can use questions with enough to get more information. Is your home big enough to have people visit? Next, we see a point in the answer. It's about as big as a small apartment. Here we see as big as. So here we're comparing it, which is John's tiny home, and a small apartment. It's as big as a small apartment, which means it's the same size. Next, we're going to see some examples of have to. In this conversation, John is moving into a new home. So the question is, do you have to do anything before you move in? In his answer, John talks about some chores he has to do, and he uses have to. We can also see some vocabulary here. I have to vacuum and tidy up. I don't have to clean very much. Next, we see what we can do to describe a dream home or just to describe a home we live in. So we can talk about rooms and furniture. What rooms does it have? Next, we see talking about location. It's near a river and next to a big forest. Remember, we can use words like near or next to talk about where our home is. This is one way we can describe our dream home. We can also see more describing a dream house. What I would like, I'd love to, I want. Okay, everyone, that's it for our Unit 5 review. If you have any questions, please think of them and ask them in Zoom class, or you can send your professor a message. Be sure to check eClass for assignments, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.